Ladies and gentlemen, good evening. Welcome to the press conference following the EU Eastern Partnership Justice and Home Affairs Ministerial meeting, which is the second one in history. First, we'll have a statement from the Minister of Justice, Mr. Rasnach, on behalf of the Presidency, which will be followed by a short statement by Commissioner Jourova, and then we'll take a few questions. With that, Minister, I give the floor to you.
Honorable journalists, the first day of the Justice and Home Affairs Council has come to an end, and we discussed the issues of cooperation with Eastern Partnership countries. This part of the meeting was very productive. More than 20 countries took part in the debate. And in the result of this meeting, we have developed joint communication of the Presidency and the Commission on the meeting of the Justice and Home Affairs Ministers. Latvian Presidency in the European Council, in close cooperation with the Commission, organized this second informal meeting of Ministers of Justice and Home Affairs of the EU and Eastern Partnership countries. The meeting took place in Riga on the 29th of January. The discussion focused on the changes in the reform of the judiciary, on law enforcement legislation reforms in Armenia, Azerbaijan, Belarus, Georgia, and Moldova, and Ukraine. Stock was taken of progress made since the previous meeting of ministers that took place in 2013, October 7 and 8. The discussions focused on improvement of cooperation between law enforcement agencies to strengthen fight against corruption and to reinforce the independence of judges and prosecutors, as well as to promote the reforms in the area of prosecution. During the meeting, the participants underscored the importance of cooperation with Eastern Partnership countries, especially in the area of justice and home affairs. Presidency and the EU Commission congratulated the reforms made in several Eastern Partnership countries and reinforced the importance of political commitment and relevant implementation of reforms. Participants of the meeting recognized the further effect of the issues discussed at the meeting on other areas of further work, for example, on mobility and security. Presidency and the EU Committee underlined the importance of cooperation principles, underscored the statement in the joint declaration that was adopted in the previous Eastern Partnership Home and Justice Affairs ministerial meeting, and that committed the continuation of the started work.
Commissioner, you have the floor.
Ladies and gentlemen, good evening. First, let me give my appreciation to Mr. Minister Rasnach and other Latvian colleagues again for organizing a good event in very good atmosphere and very well organized. So thank you for that. As you all know, today we met with the EU Ministers of Home and Justice Affairs, as well as the ministers from the Eastern Partnership countries to prepare the upcoming Riga Eastern Partnership Summit, which will be held on the 21st and 22nd May this year. We had a very fruitful and useful dialogue on strengthening law enforcement and justice reforms and about the progress the Eastern Partnership countries made, which the minister already spoke about. We discussed that justice reforms are a key step towards a fully fledged democracy and the rule of law. Citizens must have access to justice and they must be equal before the law. This is essential for citizens to be able to trust their justice system. Justice reform is a prerequisite also for sustainable economic growth, for implementing fundamental rights on the ground, and for combating corruption. Corruption and combating corruption was also one of the prevailing topics which we discussed today. Also, we discussed in particular the reform of the Public Prosecutor's Office, which is a specific challenge that has been facing many of the Eastern partners for many years. Reform of the Prosecutor's Office recently got underway in several countries of the region. It is important that the new legislation is implemented on the ground and soon. There is no one-size-fits-all solution, as choices depend on the legal traditions of each country. But there are European principles based on our shared values and embodied in Council of Europe standards that should guide on Eastern partners in their reform efforts. We are happy to see that the several Eastern partners are helping each other and the EU member states are supporting this process. We have also stressed that in a view of the threats we are facing today, whether from organized crime groups or from terrorists, law enforcement is more than ever crucial in maintaining the safety at all levels of government and across countries and societies. Establishing sound anti-corruption measures and providing clear track record were also singled out as our common priorities. Finally, we have assured our partners that the EU is ready to support reform measures in Eastern Partnership countries with guidance, benchmarking, and assistance, including the financial assistance. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner. Do we have any questions? Yes, before asking your question, we have a question here. Also state where you're from, what your media is, what your name is, and also who you're addressing the question to. Thank you.
Thank you very much. This is a question for Mr. Kozlovskis. My name is Ryan Parry from the Associated Press. In the previous press conference, there was some time dedicated to speaking about working with internet service providers and social media channels in terms of bringing down online jihadist propaganda. Could you go into a bit more detail into that and tell us how do you believe you could get the commitment of social media channels and internet service providers? What actions will the European Union be taking?
Thank you for your question. Indeed, it touches more upon the first part of our meeting, but I guess there was not enough time to respond to these questions in the first press conference. As the Commissioner already pointed out, the work has begun with the biggest internet providers. We have held a discussion in Brussels where we have launched the dialogue. The goal is to agree upon the common principles and criteria to be able to respond jointly. The largest internet providers have given their assent to work in this area. They have already the capacity to monitor these networks. They do that 7 days a week, 24 hours a day. But we just need to agree upon the criteria to identify this dangerous content. It is a joint work to be done. The presidency will continue it together with the Commission, and the experts will suggest guidelines that could help to identify this content. Secondly, of course, we need to focus on legislation too. That is already in the competence of the justice ministers to find a solution. We know that this question goes hand in hand with issues, with the topics of the freedom of speech and other freedoms that we value in the EU. Hello. I represent LETA, the National News Agency. Question to Mr. Kozlovskis. So, cooperation to combat terrorism. But To what extent are you considering the possibility that in one of the EU member states there could be a hybrid warfare, something similar provoked by Russia? Have you planned to coordinate the cooperation between EU law enforcement agencies to support a possible member state where a hybrid warfare could break out? In reply to your question, if we see today's meeting, mostly we focused on radicalization questions and the possibilities to prevent it. If we turn to the terrorism question, it is a very crucial matter. We have already seen attacks on our critical infrastructure, and we are working to avert such attacks in the future. It is not, the question you asked was not our primary focus today, but we do work on it already.
Thank you for coming, and see you all tomorrow. Thank you.